It's not just another day in your life. Things are changing for the better. At Comcast, we see those changes, and we're thinking about how we use technology today to live, work, learn, and play. And we're building for the future now, so we're better prepared for the wants and needs of tomorrow. That's why Comcast is rolling out multi-gig internet speeds to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025, making our already industry-leading network even faster, smarter, greener, and more reliable. Over the decades, Comcast has been your partner, working hard to serve your community, and will continue to be your partner. We're expanding our gigabits, so you can enjoy the tiny bits that matter most.
I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know, but you'll feel better if you talk to someone. And you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988, Minnesota Lifeline, for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. Designed for more than just therapists, if you're a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve. And it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. To date, it's been viewed almost 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself. And if you're encouraged by it as well, share with a friend. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing or empowering efforts as an author or speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So today I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on the positive side of DEI. So as the battle against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion continues to rage, with so many people not just withholding support for DEI efforts, large and small, but also arguing actively that DEI efforts are detrimental to individual, organizational, and countrywide well-being, I find myself wrestling between two different challenges. First and foremost, I'm doing my part to inform, empower, and equip helping professionals in a variety of fields to do their best to help meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible. I'm grateful for the opportunity to continually hear that professionals leave these trainings with practical takeaways, which they can apply to their personal and professional lives to make a practical difference immediately. That being said, I also continually hear that they were pleasantly surprised because the training was not only better than they expected, but it was completely different than they expected. And that's the point where I get very curious and inquire at it is related to what it is that they expected and why. Most often, I'm informed in some way that what they expected was based on a series of mandated diversity or cultural competence trainings that they were forced to attend at their place of employment. And unfortunately, these trainings had a lot of similar traits. When combined with the very skewed perspective heard on the news and read about on social media, there became an established, dreaded expectation whenever DEI, diversity, or cultural competence was even discussed. One common expected characteristic of DEI trainings is apparently that they're always negative. Now, on one hand, I can see why this would be the case. Although even I can admit that it would be nice if we lived in a world where diversity trainings would not even be necessary. We unfortunately don't live in that world. In this world, we have been in negative experiences and traumatic experiences, both historically as well as in the present day, which have been influenced by inaccurate cultural beliefs, conscious and unconscious biases, prejudices, discrimination, microaggressions, as well as subtle or obvious, intentional or unintentional racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, and more. Even just saying some of those words likely made many of you uncomfortable just hearing them. It's understandable. However, while experiences like these are what made DEI efforts necessary, the goal of diversity and cultural competence training is not to stay in that negative past or dwell on present disparities and injustices. The goal of shining a light on these negative experiences is to inform those who aren't even aware that those experiences exist so that they can be motivated to join in the efforts with all of us to change the present and create a future where no one needs to continue to experience these ever again. Because of this, DEI has the potential to not just not be negative, but it has the chance to be the embodiment of positivity and empowerment. When there is less resistance to acknowledging negative causal realities of the past, and the reality that there are unfortunately remnants of those past realities negatively impacting people today, every day, then we don't have to waste time dwelling on the negative, but we can work together to brainstorm, practice, and actively create ways to build a present and future that is not threatened by diversity, but appreciates it for all of the value that it can bring to everyone. Now, another commonly expected characteristic of DEI trainings is that it's very punitive and shaming. Now, as a therapist, I can very much understand at least two possible reasons why this is often the case. One reason is that many who facilitate DEI trainings, even those with the greatest positive intentions, have experienced so much pushback, even to the point of invalidating or denying the reality of cultural disparities at all, blaming traumatic experiences on those who experience them, and justifying maintaining practices that benefit some and hinder even the hardest working outsiders in a certain group from improving their life circumstances. Multiple experiences like this can understandably make someone lead with a negative presentation, preemptively defending themselves in advance from perceived opposition, invalidation, and disrespect. Unfortunately, for those attendees who had no intention of doing this, this experience justifiably fails to meet its goal. Similarly, many who attend these trainings are predisposed to feeling punitive shame at the mere mention of a negative history, even if the history precedes their existence. I see this often when people get upset when they're informed that their ancestors, or people that they merely identify with historically, behaved in ways that oppressed others. It is here when they feel compelled to not only highlight all the person's good qualities and accomplishments, a reasonable thing to consider for truthful balance purposes, but also to minimize the oppressive impact that those people had and blaming their victims, ultimately causing them to resist being a part of change efforts today, all just to ease the feeling of shame they have by being associated with certain historical realities and feel better about themselves today. The sad part about it is that while emotionally reasonable to try to protect one's self esteem and sense of identity, its consequences are too significant to be justifiable, particularly as it relates to hindering their ability to see ways in which they may be unwittingly perpetuating the same oppressive patterns with less malicious motives, of course, but with similar consequences. More importantly, the historical protection effort like this is unnecessary to meet a reasonable self-esteem need. Here's what I mean. In my role as a marriage and family therapist, I often encounter people who, after living many years with a certain perception of extended family members, discover that someone who they love, cared for, or had a lot of positive experiences with may have even positively impacted their identity development, and nonetheless still did something horrible in the past. When discovered, there's an internal battle regarding whether they will find a way to preserve their positive relationship with the good aspects of that distant relative, while simultaneously acknowledging that what that person did was horrible and unacceptable in many ways. Whether or not that distant relative apologized or atoned for their actions, the person today can learn to choose to keep the good and disown the bad, versus the other internal battle option of disowning the person altogether, including all the good lessons that they learned from them, and try to delete them from relevance in their lives, even publicly distance themselves in the process. This family related challenge is often what I see in daily life when people see the past harsh actions and present realities discussed in many DEI trainings and choose between option A, strongly embracing the negative history as if they were personally responsible for it all, or option B, dismissing the relevance of it all and all the present and future consequences, all just to avoid the personal shame of one's ancestors or group associations. Instead of these two extreme and often unhealthy imbalanced efforts, I'm a fan of option C, learning how to acknowledge the good and the bad realities in the past, holding on to the lessons of the good aspects while denouncing as reprehensible the oppressive behaviors done in the past, and choosing today to use the good lessons to benefit self and others, and being open to working together to be a part of the emotional and behavioral healing that's needed to ensure, here's a kicker, that the future is less and less influenced by those past traumatic experiences because they're not being perpetuated any longer in the future. Which leads to a third commonly expected characteristic of DEI, being that it's all theory and no action. This is unfortunate because it's often, not always, true. On one hand, I'm a firm believer that of the idea that the best change comes when those involved have a genuine understanding of why the change needs to occur. When they understand the impact of the way things are, for some more so than for others. And when they have a vested interest in ensuring that everyone has the same opportunities for their hard work to result in success, personal and communal growth, and the elimination of social injustices for a more positive and mutually beneficial society. On the other hand, too often the emphasis remains on just gaining understanding and doesn't practically lead to any tangible changes. Changes that people can see, can experience for themselves, enough to show that the effort to acknowledge the hard truths of the past and present, work through those internal battles of what things to keep and what things to distance themselves from, were all worth it. Worth it not just as a sacrificial charity case, but for a select few or minority, but because helping reduce unjust disparities ultimately has a positive impact on everyone in one's community as well as our society as a whole. With these considerations being just a few of the many that are available, I hope you can see why I have the audacity to continue to have diversity related discussions on podcasts like this, as well as facilitate multicultural awareness and diversity trainings in small and large organizations alike. Sure, I know that assumptions about what a diversity training means will make many people do whatever is within their power to avoid the experience altogether. They don't even come to understandably avoid what they're confident would be a negative, shameful, and practically pointless experience. However, that would be unfortunate, as it does not have to be the case anywhere, and certainly is not the case with me. There is a positive side of DEI. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the most important side. Yes, I strongly value knowing and understanding our history, both the good and the bad. However, the reason why I have this value is because of the positive impact this knowledge, balanced knowledge, can have on our actions in the present and ultimately the future. My hope for you is that you would resist the temptation to be averse to DEI, diversity, and cultural competence related trainings and workshops available to you. My hope would also be that you would be pleasantly surprised by the balanced perspectives of those leading those trainings, and that you could seek out and experience a positive, shame free, and practically relevant side of DEI in your life. It's if not that experience for you of the annual DEI training at your job, then feel free to send your leaders to me, and I'll look forward to helping as well in whatever way that I can in your next training. But even if that's not an option for you, I believe that you can be that person in your group to ask a strategic question or share a balanced comment that helps your organization see beyond the punitive policies and procedures and remember the positive potential that you can have on yourself, your colleagues, and everyone you serve, and the entire community as a whole. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to today's Diversity Dude podcast. If you have any pressing diversity related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame free or empowering guest speaker or training on this often sensitive topic, then feel free to reach out to me directly at www.diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who can benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well, or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you and that you will share with someone else so that they can be inspired as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
If you live in an older home, it may contain lead-based paint on walls, woodwork, and windows. Even more bad news, lead exposure can be dangerous to young children and impact their brain development. And now, the good news. Hennepin County will fix lead hazards in your home at no cost to you.
We were worried because of the paint in the windows in the bedroom. They were peeling and chipping, and we know that when paint peels and chips and it looks a certain way, that's possibly lead. We were worried for our children more so than anything.
Eligible homes can qualify for up to $15,000 in upgrades. You may even qualify for new energy-efficient windows. Don't worry, Hennepin County has a trusted list of pre-approved contractors. You won't even have to find companies with correct licenses or certifications.
I've just done a test and it's positive. So we know that this is lead-based paint, and then we know it's a hazard because it's creating dust every time this window moves and opens. And if you look in here, that's just full of lead paint chips.
You won't have to stay with your cousin while you're getting the lead out. Hennepin County even pays for you and your family to stay in a hotel while the work is underway. The last good news is how easy it is to apply. Just go to hennepin.us/lead control to get started.
I'm really happy with the program. We can go to bed knowing that our children are safe.
That's hennepin.us/lead control. Tell your friends about it.
I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know, but you'll feel better if you talk to someone, and you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988 Minnesota Lifeline for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.